Julie Smith. I teach politics at Cambridge University and I'm a member of the House of Lords. The referendum on whether the UK should stay in the European Union or not has created a whole set of challenges for the UK. Does it mean regaining sovereignty or impending doom? Well, it actually gives an element of both. The decision to leave the European Union potentially means that the UK will regain national sovereignty, the power to create its own laws, not have to listen to the other 27 member states of the European Union, not be subject to the European Court of Justice. However, if the United Kingdom is going to be seeking to trade as part of the European single market, and even if we want to be part of an arrangement whereby we export to the European Union, we still have to abide by certain standards. We're still going to be subject to European regulations in some ways. And if we adopt a bespoke model that looks a bit like the Norwegian model, then we'll still be subject to European law, we'll still be subject to the European Court of Justice, but we'll have no say at all. So actually, regaining sovereignty might equally be at the expense of being able to make decisions and influence those decisions. So regaining sovereignty in itself might not be the ideal. But we got the decision we got. Parliament is now looking at what the government should be doing. The Prime Minister is keen to trigger Article 50 and begin the process of negotiating the departure from the European Union by March of 2017. Well, what's that going to mean, and what does it mean for the UK? Actually, the Brexit vote highlighted major divisions in the United Kingdom, particularly between Scotland and Northern Ireland on the one hand, both of which voted to remain, and England and Wales on the other hand, which were more strongly in favour of leaving the European Union. Those differences will be played out in the debates and discussions over the next 2.5 years, with the Scottish Government, the Northern Irish Government and the Welsh Government all seeking to play a part in the decisions, but at the moment being shut out by Theresa May. So some constitutional questions will be coming to the fore. Can the UK leave the European Union and not damage relations with the Republic of Ireland? Unlikely. Will the Brexit vote lead to another attempt by Scotland to become independent? Almost certainly. Will we end up with a rump United Kingdom that's really England and Wales left on our own? Quite possibly. And that then leaves us with the political challenge, one that seems to have left a narrative of, if not xenophobia and racism, certainly a sense in which foreigners are perhaps less welcome than they used to be. And that's one of the most serious and unpleasant downsides of the Brexit vote, that somehow the view has been taken by the Prime Minister that the vote to leave was about immigration, about people not wanting EU nationals to be resident in the UK. And there is a new discourse that absolutely has to be challenged. Otherwise, the open, tolerant United Kingdom that we've been used to over the last half century may become under challenge.
We saw it with Brexit, we see it in the whole of the European Union, that the people are dissatisfied. They're not satisfied with their lives, they are dissatisfied with the inequalities. The poor are getting poorer, the richer are getting richer, and the middle class is almost disappearing. How are politicians going to deal with that, not only in Britain with Brexit, but in the whole of the European Union?
It's almost too late in the day to be dealing with it. We've ended up with a situation where for years we've had policy areas that are no-go areas that we haven't talked about. We haven't explained the benefits of European integration. We've simply vilified the European Union for things that go wrong. And so in some ways we need to be looking at how we talk about the European Union, explaining the benefits, but we also need at the domestic level to look for ways of rebalancing our economies, that those who are in favour of European integration are very often the better off, the better educated, the people for whom the benefits are clearly tangible. Those who are frustrated are those for whom the benefits are far less evident, and yet in terms of peace, that affects all of us. In terms of jobs and money's coming into the country, that actually affects all of us as well. But what we've been very bad at, not just the UK, but right across the European Union, is explaining to those whose lives don't seem to have benefited quite how things have changed and how there are benefits. But also, we need to find ways of trying to reduce income inequality, which is something that is going to take time. You can't change that immediately overnight.
Are you fearing that there will be a clash between Brussels and London after invoking Article 50? And I'm asking you that because we saw even Angela Merkel saying to the German businessmen that they're not going to have, they will have to deal and they will have to stay in the standard that the free movement of people is what needs to be, what we need to keep at any time, that Britain cannot go without that. They will have to accept the free movement of people if they want to stay in the united market of the European Union.
It was a very strange speech, period. Yes. Because it looked to take voters from the left, it looked to take voters from the far right. And so we had two different discourses going on. One that was about old-fashioned, potentially Keynesian economics, about tax and spend, about borrowing again, about, yes, trying to reduce inequality, but with some means that perhaps won't work. If you try and reduce pay for the highest earners, what do? Are you really going to reduce the inequality, or are you going to get people either not declaring what they earn or moving elsewhere? So I think there are things that sound good, but whether they're going to work in practice is a bit less clear-cut. And then on the other side, you had a whole discourse about, and it ran through the whole Conservative Party conference, being unclear about whether we wanted EU nationals in the UK at all. And that really was speaking to a narrative of UKIP, the far right, but also recognising that there are parts of the country that traditionally voted left, voted for the Labour Party, who voted to leave the EU, and in part that was about immigration. But that's a narrative that I think many of us really would want to change, because if we are looking to a society that doesn't have EU nationals living and working in the United Kingdom, we will be impoverished for that, not just financially, but in terms of culture. But also, a lot of EU nationals currently work in the National Health Service. If they leave, we're going to be much worse off, far less able to have the best healthcare to which we aspire.
We heard the speech of Theresa May, your Prime Minister, and it was a speech, although she talked to the Conservative Party, she is Conservative, it was a speech that we expected from the leader of a left party. She talked about the inequalities and of the state intervening in the bonuses and in the pension system. How do you characterize that? What do you believe?
I think the interesting thing is the fact that even Angela Merkel is now saying we've got to be tough on this, because all the way through David Cameron's renegotiation and prior to the referendum, Germany was essentially our closest ally. And the fact that Merkel is having to draw a line in the sand is significant. It's also important because one of the lines that the Brexiteers kept saying was, it will be fine. The EU isn't going to cut off its nose to spite its face. We export a lot to Europe, but they export even more to us. We have a trade deficit. They're going to want to keep exporting. And so I think the line to business is quite important, because Merkel is saying, you know what, that line they were spinning, it's not true. And there was a complacent assumption in the UK that somehow the trade issue would dominate and mean that political leaders would cave in over free movement. But what those who were advocating leave forgot was that every single national leader has a domestic electorate, that it's not simply Brussels or any of the member states trying to be awkward or punish us. The fact that actually they are accountable to their own electorates, and if they start offering an easier deal to the UK on leaving, then they're going to fan the flames of further separatism and calls for further disintegration, and that's something that they don't want.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.